Today I received a sample copy from the publisher, and there are some mistakes, so they are going back to the printers. But I thought I'll just bring it only because I'm very excited to have a sample copy with me. But basically, my talk would be around that, around the book. So it's more like a story that I want to share with you. It's an autobiographical case study. It's my own story, but not my whole life, that's too long, but just a chunk of it. And this is a case where I was working for the United Nations in Pakistan, Islamabad, UNDP in specific. And I experienced a lot of sexual harassment in the office. And after 3 years of struggling with it and figuring out what to do, and by the way, I was working on women's rights, very much so, and still I could not figure out how to deal with sexual harassment in a high-powered office like that. It is easier for me to deal with it on the street. आप खींच के चांटा भी कभी लगा देते हो, कभी धक्का भी मार देते हो, लेकिन it's very odd when you know the person and the person is your boss, and every paper that you write has to go through his office. So the dynamics are very complicated. And so after 3 years, I decided that I would make an application. In the beginning, I didn't even know if there was a policy or not. I kept on asking the same guy and other people in the admin, and they told me, no, there is no policy, anti-sexual harassment policy or something I was expecting at the UN. But they told me there was none. And then one day, suddenly, I found out. I then actually proposed. It's quite ironic. I proposed, because I was also the head of the gender unit in the office. And I had actually developed the very first gender program in the UNDP system. They have offices in 160 countries, and Pakistan office was the first one, and they assigned me to develop it. So the whole situation was very ironic. I had women working for me in that unit or for the unit. I had these breakthrough types of projects for women, and at that time I was considered a pretty assertive woman in Islamabad, yet not very able to handle the situation. And finally, I proposed to the country director. I said, I want to develop an anti-sexual harassment policy. And he said, fine. And I wrote to all the UNDP offices, and I sent them an email, and I said, listen, I want to develop something like this. If you have any inputs or anything, let me know. And nobody answered. But then one day I received an email from New York, the head office. And without saying anything, the email had an attachment, and here was a policy that was actually instituted in like 7-8 years before that time. And it was an anti-sexual harassment policy. And I couldn't believe it. I remember I kept reading it, and yes, there was a policy in the United Nations for many years, and nobody in our office at least knew it. So
what year was that?
I filed the case in 97. And the policy was instituted in 83 or something, 85, So I filed the case, but when I took the decision, in a hush-hush manner, the news went around. The guy didn't find out, but he was a Pashtun guy, a Pakistani guy, but very senior in the office. But it so happened that we had a staff of about 100 people in the UNDP office, and 16 were women. And as the news went around very quietly, I had 11, including myself, 11 women that were ready to file a case against the same guy. And the others who did not agree to file a case, they came and they talked to me, and they said that हमारे साथ भी यही करता है, मगर we want a career in the UN, and they will not forgive you. So that was it. We filed the case. It was 22nd of December, 1997. And we thought that our decision to take this forward is the big thing. And, everybody had to weigh options and about our careers, about our families. Somebody was a divorcee. Somebody was from a very conservative family. Now, 11 of us, 8 were Pakistanis. One was a Japanese, one was a British, and one was Dutch. And at that time, the senior most person in UNDP was a British guy who headed the office, and one deputy was Japanese, and the other deputy was this guy. So he was really up in the senior management. And so anyway, women had to think through a lot because of the consequences. And when we filed the case, and we thought, you know, that was it. Now we just have to face the guy and see how the inquiry goes. But nothing like that. It was only the beginning of the process, and it was not even a good beginning. Because after that, the management colluded, and they sided with the guy absolutely. And regardless of what we were saying, they did everything to cut us apart. They tried to buy off people. I mean, shameless things for 2 years. They tried to give money to women to step away. They tried to blackmail women. They wrote very nasty comments for the assessment report. And they said, these are the comments we are going to put into your report. So either you resign, and if you don't, this is the assessment you will get. And so women really stood. Because I was an activist and I was kind of familiar with how to run teams, I kept the group very close. Once they decided to file the complaint, then I kept the process very, very tight. And I said, whatever worries, whatever risks, whatever threats, we will come and talk to each other. And I think that is what saved us for 2 years. They almost hunted us like witches. वो जो यूरोप के ज़माने में नहीं होता hunt, actual witch hunt. That is how it was for us. And they created an environment, and I know Open works with organizations, and that's what you support, etc. So in that way, I think it would be of interest to you that they created an environment in an organization where everybody who would even say salam to us would think as if they are betraying the management, or they thought they're really taking a big risk with their career. So they would just, everybody would, because I was very well respected in the organization, but they would not even answer to my salam. And then they started opening parallel inquiries against us. Like the same guy who we had complained against, he would come up with some typo and something, and then the bosses will put a stamp on it, and they would open a free-floating inquiry against us. There was one inquiry which they asked an Iranian guy to head, a very senior guy, to head, and I was very angry, and I asked him, what is your TOR, terms kya hai, inquiry ki? And he said to look into your last 10 years record and find anything. And this was all official, it was in writing. So the counter harassment or intimidation or abuse of authority, whatever I may want to call it, was just really shameless is the only word that comes to me. So I had just this case became a landmark case for the UN also, because they said this was their first pure sexual harassment case. And we said, what is pure sexual harassment case? Sexual harassment is sexual harassment. And they said, we have had 4 or 5 cases before that, mostly in Africa. And those cases were more tied in with an administrative decision. So if somebody didn't get a promotion, they would file a case, and they would say, this happened to me because of sexual harassment. And then we would assess whether the administrative decision was correct or not. But you guys are not asking for anything. And so even the first inquiry panel that came, they kept asking, was there a loss of pay, salary, or any other administrative loss? And we would say no. All we want to do is to report a very disgusting behavior of an employee to our organization. That's it. So it was very difficult for them to understand and very difficult for them to inquire. So that, in any case, after I will not go too much into the details of the case, but I just gave you a glimpse of the kind of counter-harassment we experienced. We played it very smartly. We strategized it very smartly, so we were not kind of pushed away the way they wanted to. One by one, we had to leave the organization because it was just not possible to breathe. For example, they sabotaged all my programs, and it was pretty gruesome. And so one by one we left the organization, but we continued the case, and that really made them very angry because they thought if they push us out, then that means that is the end of the case, and that didn't happen. And we gradually pushed our case up, and it came to a level where it was like a Supreme Court level within the UN system, because the UN system cannot, they have to deal with their own cases themselves. You cannot take them outside. So in New York, finally a panel was designated, and that was outside the UNDP system. So there were people from very senior management of other UN organizations, 5 people. And so 3 of us were, we came to New York as the witnesses to the case against UNDP and this guy. And finally, I'm not going into the details of how we won, but we won the case. And we actually got most of the evidence from this guy's evidence to show that he was lying. But with that winning, it was still not a win. When you read the book, when you read the book, you would you would find that it was a win, but it didn't feel like that at all. Because UN, even at the last stage, UN treated us like we were not humans, and they didn't even tell us that we had won the case. We read it from the newspaper. So they kind of mistreated us till the last moment, especially the Pakistan office. The New York Walas were much better. So anyway, that was the case. But when we finally got it through, the civil society of Pakistan got together, and they said that this was a major breakthrough for us. And 22nd of December, which was the date we filed the case, that will be designated as to mark the struggle against sexual harassment. So I was out of the country for a couple of years, and when I went back, I started a movement, and that movement was called ASHA. And I want to talk, I'll skip this. ASHA is Alliance Against Sexual Harassment, and ASHA also means hope. And we started it in 2001. And I think that I was very eager to start it because my realization was that I had been working on women's issues also a lot. And I had started an organization which was like the very first crisis center in Pakistan in 1991 called Bedari. And I must have followed like more than 1,000 cases of violence, rape, domestic violence, many other cases. And we all, like in those, there were many Hudud cases. You all are too young to remember those things, but we all used to come out on the streets and fight for a case, and then the government would take notice, etc., etc. And I was very tired of that because I felt like every woman has to start from ground zero and move forward, and there was nothing we were able to add to the society. So collectively, we were not going one notch up. Every person started from scratch. And I was very tired of that. The second thing that I realized was that we give a lot of attention to these flamboyant crimes, naak kaat di, kaan kaat diye, and then everybody goes, wow, and then we all kind of rush and save and follow and push the government and all that stuff. But sexual harassment, I realized, was something that every woman was experiencing almost every day, I would say every hour. But we had never really raised a voice against this issue. And I also felt like it was so slippery that you couldn't touch it. It was full of doubts. It was just like sand. You try and hold the sand and it just slips out of your fingers. And educated women, rich women, poor women, everybody experienced it, going to the hospital, going to the school, studying in a university, working in an office, working in the fields, everywhere. And so I said, we have been so blind to this. And then we did a situation analysis, and we found out that not a single organization in the country other than the UN had an anti-sexual harassment policy. So we set out with a movement, and we said this will be not like a pocket test or anything like that. This will be a nationwide thing, and this will be for all women, and we will try and move us up a bit collectively. So we mobilized a lot of, any woman in Pakistan that I would talk to, they would be totally in. I didn't have to convince anybody. So we got a lot of women from villages who were like school teachers and farmers, and a lot of men joined in, labor unions, academia, civil society, law enforcing agencies. So year after year we mobilized everybody and we said, this is a problem, we are going to come up with a solution. We started with private sector and we got the employers of private organizations, and it was very interesting because in the beginning it was very difficult to establish trust because NGO walas have a reputation, and for NGO walas these private sectors people have a reputation, and we used to think that these are profit mongers, and as the impression hota hai, especially from the old communist ideologies and whatnot, कि private sectors, these are the bad guys, and private sector thought these are the NGO walas with all the funding and they run around in their big vehicles, and so it was a bit difficult in the beginning to establish trust. And but we told them, listen, this is a problem. Do you have it? And they say, yes, we do. And then we would I had drafted a policy, an anti-sexual harassment policy for Pakistan, very, very much in tune with the culture, and I would put it on the table and I said, this is what our solution is. What do you do when you have this problem? He says, समझ नहीं आता, एक बात कहता है, एक दूसरी बात कहता है, हम दोनों को फायर कर देते. And so we said, this is something if you want to use, and they said, okay, so what is in it for you? And we said, nothing, voluntarily you adopt this, we just want this result, so try it out. So what we did was that we went around the whole country and we first developed that anti-sexual harassment policy. We got a lot of feedback on it, and we developed this is the then president of Chamber of Commerce in Karachi. We got all the chambers on board, and we formalized the policy. It was very interesting. We got the government on board from day one. तो गवर्नमेंट वाले कहते थे कि सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट तो हम बोल ही नहीं सकते, ये तो बड़ा फहश लफ्ज़ है. So हम कहते थे ये वर्ब नहीं है, नाउन है, you think of it as a term section.
They believe in action.
And we used to ask them कि करना सेक्सुअल हरासमेंट करना ठीक है, बोलना गलत है. जैसे नहीं हम बहुत मुहज़्ज़ब लोग, हम ऐसी बातें नहीं करते. And of course, what they wouldn't say is that we are judging you women also who are such fosh women, talking about these bad things. So we played it very smartly, and we said, fine, we will not use this word, very bad word, So we called the anti-sexual harassment policy the Code of Conduct for Gender Justice. So that was very acceptable. And we did go to the Urdu dance of our society, and I remember Kishwar Nahid specifically, I told her, I said, you coin me a term because I want an Urdu word for it. So she came back and she talked to other people like Fehmida Riaz and all those. And they came back to us and they said, Jinsi harassiyat or Jinsi. So we said, fine, at least we need to have an Urdu word for it. So then in Urdu we use that later. But Jinsi harassiyat is sexual harassment basically, but it's a very Persianized, muhazzab lafz hai. So we went ahead with that, and we then got, in addition to labor unions and all, we got our stars on board, TV, film, sab logon ko, and we started a thing called gender friendly companies, awards for gender friendly companies, and we used to do this mini Oscar kind of a series. And every year we would give awards to the companies. और ये सब लोग आके बोलते थे, तो managers जितने थे, CEOs वगैरह, they used to feel very good about it, and कि भाई कभी रीमा, कभी समीना पीरज़ादा, these people are giving them awards. And so we started a trend. It was a fashionable thing. It was an in thing to adopt this policy, and we continued for about 5-6 years. And these were annual awards, and then we noticed that companies had started using Asha awards as like a recruitment banner. So when they would do their recruitment campaigns, they would say Asha award winner, and actually women responded to that. And one big company, which is Atak Refinery, it is in Pindi, it's almost like a city, it's less of a company, more of a city, and they told me that over 3 years their induction of women increased by 8% because of this Asha award thing. And people knowing that, or women knowing that they have this code of conduct. तो पाकिस्तान में अभी भी this anti-sexual harassment policy अगर कहो ना कि code adopt किया हुआ है, तो they know the code. So the name goes, that is the code, our secret code. Then we got the mainstream media engaged. And our mainstream media would not give a second of free time to anybody. But we got them to do programs for us. We would do like a month-long campaign at least twice or 3 times a year, with full-fledged orientation and awareness of the policy, of the legislation that we needed, and we even did a lot of public service messages. By the way, most of this all of this movement was without any donor funding. We wanted to keep it that way. Very little funds for sometimes for some hotel bills or a secretariat or something once in a while. But basically it was a very indigenous movement, and we got everybody to donate. Donate not in terms of money, but like media was so open. Geo, actually I say that with a lot of pride, because Geo would not do anything free for anybody. Geo did 12 cartoons for us. They were like half-a-minute cartoons that we had created as part of our campaign, and they did the whole animation, which is very expensive, and then they ran it for a month. So a lot of that went on. A lot of our parliamentarians, we got them on board, especially after 2008. Earlier, the government, Musharraf wali government jo thi, that was not very responsive to our proposals. But in 2008, it had been almost like 8 years for the movement. The whole country was mobilized. We had everybody on board, not just on board, like fully owning this movement. And so I drafted 2 pieces of legislation. One was a criminal law amendment, Pakistan Penal Code mein. It is section 509 that I rewrote, and I added sexual harassment as a term, and the definition and the punishment, 3 years and some fine. And the second law was that we already have this anti-sexual harassment policy. It should have a legislative cover, and that law was a very comprehensive law. Law to nahi bana tha, lekin bill jo tha, it said that every organization it's mandatory on every organization to have an anti-sexual harassment policy, and this is what the policy should look like. So these were the 2 legislation, and we did a lot of lobbying with the women parliamentarians as working women, because this whole campaign had the working women theme, and that is why we had the farmers with us, we have the bhattawalas with us, we had home-based workers with us. All women of all professions were with us. So we got hold of the parliamentarians and we said, you are working women too, so you need to connect with us on that level. Now the lobbying was very interesting, because again we were new to this, and we had to learn the mindset, just like private sector. We had to learn the mindset of our politicians, which was very new, and our bureaucrats, because we decided we would go with these bills as government bills. And if you know, there is a distinction between private member bill and government bill. The private member bill anybody can propose, but the chances of it passing are about 2%. And the government bill at a later stage, it's more difficult to push, because you have to go through your bureaucrats, your ministry, and that almost took us about a year. But then for implementation, it is a lot better, because if it's a government bill, then you have the ownership and you can implement it better. So we went through it. This is Farooq Naik sitting there. He was the law minister at that time, and Shahnaz Wazir Ali. And he was the law minister at that time. He did many changes to my draft, and later he became the chair of the Senate. When our bill, ragarta jab Senate mein pahuncha, so then he was the chair. And after that, when we started the implementation, now he's the law minister again. So it suited us quite well to invest in all these relationships. Magar, it was such an interesting experience, because we got the lists and the pictures of all these parliamentarians, and we had printouts, and not just in my office, I had it on my walls at home. उस पे notes बनाते रहते थे पागलों की तरह, like detectives ना, and we used to gather information about these parliamentarians, कब सोते हैं, कब जागते हैं, कहाँ जाते हैं, all of that. Because we had to, see, we don't have lobbying firms, or civil society never really got into this role. This was the very first time that what a lot of people say, we crossed the mirror, like we went through the mirror, because civil society only bashes the government. You know, कहते ये नहीं है, तुम corrupt, तुम बुरे, तुम ऐसे वैसे, तो सिर्फ जूते मारते हैं बहुत ज़्यादा. So it was very difficult for these people also to accept us, because we were saying let's team up and let's play like a team. So establishing that trust was difficult, and then they have their own mindset, they have their own priorities, they have to give jobs to their constituents, they have many things to do, huh? And then sometimes they come and sometimes they don't, so we have to kind of adjust. So what we did was, we didn't have a lot of contacts, because we didn't come from a class which has a lot of aunties and uncles in the parliament, so we had to really start from scratch. तो हम जितने वो जिसको पाकिस्तान में PN बोलते हैं, ऑफिस असिस्टेंट्स एंड यू नो एलिवेटर ऑपरेटर्स, और उन सब से ऐसे दोस्ती लगाई हुई थी हमने. पूरा पार्लियामेंट हाउस वाज लाइक अ स्पाई नेटवर्क फॉर अस, एंड we had people helping us eventually, left, right and center. You know, security guards, वो जो आपका पर्स मशीन से गुजारते हैं, everybody was like on our side, and they wanted our laws to pass so badly, because they had seen us, you know, 2.5 years with the parliament. And very interesting experiences. Once I remember the first house, the National Assembly, जो हमारा lower house है, our speaker is a woman, so she was quite good with us. But the law committee had to pass the जो committees and like the congressional committees, you know, they are the operating theaters, वो काट वाट के फिर भेजती हैं आगे. So the law committee didn't put us on the agenda. They promised, but they didn't put us on the agenda, and we were really short on time. So I called the secretary of the committee, and he said, नहीं जी वो तो भूल गए, वो तो डाला नहीं. So I said, अच्छा मुझे बताओ what is on the agenda, and he read the agenda to me, and there were some other legislation, and then he said, any other item? I said, yes, that is our agenda item. We will go under any other item. And he said, no, you cannot do that. I said, oh yes, you will see, we will go under any other item. And then I talked to the chair of the committee, who was also a woman. We have many women in different committees, and I pushed her, and she didn't quite understand the whole bill, but she kind of knew that her party leaders are in favor, and we got into that agenda through any other item. And when we were there, we were 3 women, all kind of, you know, dressed up and all, with our ammunition and our whatever handouts and everything. So that's the trickle-in karta hai members, the way the committees work. And the chair was sitting, every time a new member would come, they would look at us, you know, who are these strange women, because they are not used to seeing outside people in their committee meeting. And so the chair would she would introduce us all, and then another member would come in, she would introduce us all, because they would have, so we got introduced many times. And when the meeting started, they didn't want to go to any other item because we were sitting there. So they said, okay, let's start with you. And we just went on and on. And then when we finished, they said, okay, we finished the meeting. So we were the only agenda item on that meeting in any case. So in that way, and then we people cannot go inside the house. So we have to sit in the visiting galleries. And we had developed a system, you know, whereby we would communicate with our eyes with the parliamentarians. जो जरा बुज़दिली दिखा रहा हो ना, हम ऐसे करके इसको, you know, we used to really say, okay, get up, it's time for you to get up and speak for us. And we realized that it really mattered so much, because when they would get up and make their speeches, you know, they would actually look at our gallery again and again, because we were their audience, and they were actually speaking to the working women of Pakistan. And in this process, a very, very unique bond developed. Because I don't think the parliamentarians before this, I think I can say that with confidence, that they never really felt like they were legislating for people who were right there in front of their eyes, and that who would be very happy if they got up and made a speech. And I think that we also developed that feeling, because every time you open the television, you know, they say these corrupt, these vulgar politicians, blah, blah, blah. And we realized that it was far more easier eventually to talk to them, and they got it. You know, they got what we wanted them to get. As opposed to the educated bureaucrats, you know, who have gotten their education from very good, distinguished universities, and till the last minute they tried to pull us back. And these people, they really got it. And it was just such a beautiful connection that we developed, that it in a way repaired the gap between the civil society and the parliamentarians. You know, they really felt they were our leaders, and we really felt they were our leaders. And many people told me later that 1,000 gender trainings or sensitivity trainings could not have done what the lobbying for this legislation has done for our parliament. Earlier what used to happen, like we had a domestic violence bill that went many times and it got thrown out. But one Dadi wala guy would get up and speak negatively, everybody would go on eggshells. You know, they would walk on eggshells and sare chup ho jate the ki wo Maulana sahab khafa ho gaye. And for our bills, the same thing happened at the very last stage, even though we got the religious parties on board too, but at the very last stage, there was an uproar in the Senate and they said, nahi ji, ye to achhi auraton ko to sexual harassment hota hi nahi. ये तो आवारा औरतों को होता है. And so all these women are NGO women and they go around, stay in hotels and sleep around with men, and these are very immoral women, and that is why they get harassed. So it is not a problem of Pakistani women, it is a problem of these women. So pehli dafa to, you know, they kind of really made a big fuss, but second time we really told all the people that we had lobbied with, okay, you are now going to kind of sell us, you know. And they really got it. And next time the mullahs got up, one after the other, the progressives got up and they really shot them down. And you know, we are not even allowed to clap sitting in the galleries. But we were very happy, and I think that also got them to realize that we get so defensive every time a mullah gets up and speak. And here we got through. They are not too many in numbers. It's just that they are very scary people, you know, like out of these मैं कहती हूँ Lawrence of Arabia type को बड़े चोगे पहन के आते हैं, and they scare their own senators also. But I think that just because we were sitting there and we were kind of, you know, going buck up, so they realized they were a lot in numbers. They didn't have to fear from them, and we got through these bills, and that was a very, very. This is Raza Rabbani. I do not know how many people know of him. But we got to know many parliamentarians, and I tell you, this man is like out of like a history book, you know, absolutely honest and progressive, and like इसको display case में सजाने वाले लोग नहीं होते politics. And we found many people like that, and you know, we have this stereotype about politicians के लूट के खा गए, मर गए, पता नहीं क्या कर गए. So this is our speaker. Sherry Rahman, you know, she's many people spoke up for us. But that day, the final day that our bills were going to go through, we invited several working women, like 2 from each profession.
Sorry, what's the speaker's name?
Femida Mirza. She's quite good. And we have now pretty good parliamentarians, women parliamentarians. I would say 50% of them are pretty good. They are there because of their own abilities. I would say about 50 are there because their wives are daughters of somebody. But like this woman, police woman, you can see 2 of them, very senior ones. Zaida, who is in the middle, I think she was the first police woman. She's now retired. At that time, she was still in service. So we had a few lawyers, a few police women, some nurses, some. जो ऊपर वाली तस्वीर में ये पाकिस्तानी McDonald's के काउंटर पे होती हैं. So all sorts of working women were there in the galleries, and they were all so thrilled. And these were laws. पाकिस्तान में कभी कोई सी law का पास होने का पता भी नहीं चलता. And because we had mobilized the whole country, cabinet से पास हुआ, front page news, और सब television पे tickers और news में, नेशनल असेंबली से पास हुआ, पूरे मुल्क में खबरें, फिर सेनेट से पास हुआ, पूरे मुल्क में खबरें. So it was a very celebrated law. 25th of February को सेनेट से फाइनली 2 थे ना, तो दोनों बारी बारी पास हुए. And then you know the government was so surprised कि उनको कभी अपलॉड ही नहीं मिला. गवर्नमेंट को तो सिर्फ मार खाने को मिलती है. तो they were really surprised, and the whole parliament actually, because on Jio we told Jio कि we will go in a big campaign. तो we would show that cartoon, और फिर हम कहते थे Jio Parliament, and then we would say thank you Parliament for doing this. तो Parliament तो निहाल थे कि you know this is the first time they were getting an applaud. تو president thought کہ بھائی we've done something good, so we better do a little more of that. So he said کہ I want to sign this bill and I want to invite 100 women of substance from all over the country to witness it. جناب پریزیڈنسی میں 100 عورتیں آئیں اور تھوڑے سے مرد بھی. ہم نے ان کو کہا نہیں مردوں کو بلانا, because a lot of Asha Walas are men. Even in our core team we have half men. So he signed the bill and it was celebrated throughout the country. مجھے اتنے کالز آئے, وہ آج کل سیل ہر ریموٹسٹ گاؤں میں بھی ہے, and they would say کہ ہم ناچ رہے ہیں. And educated people were more worried about how what if this happens or that happens. And I felt that the rural women were not concerned about that. ان کو یہ پرواہ نہیں تھی implement ہوگا کہ نہیں. They used to say, باجی ان کو دیکھو ہمارے دل کی بات سمجھ آ گئی ہے. They were just so high because they felt کہ at that level, at the level of the president, ان کے لیے تو یہ ہے نا کہ بھی president, prime minister نے بھی اس کو sign کر دیا. And اور اردو کاپیاں سب کے ہم بانٹتے تھے. تو they said ان کو ہمارے جو روز کا درد ہے وہ ان کی سمجھ میں آ گیا ہے. They were just so happy for that. And so there were celebrations everywhere. And we were very ready with the whole implementation program. یہ پورا the whole thing was designed to have a very effective implementation, and therefore we had a lot of implementation mechanism built into the law itself. So the government was very happy and they said ki acha what else can we do for you. So we were very quick with our plan and we said this is what we want for implementation. We want you to nominate this committee. And تو جو implementation کے لیے بہت ہی high powered committee بنی. The Prime Minister appointed me as the chair for 2 years to do that. And یہاں میں تھوڑے سے glimpses ہی دوں گی آپ کو, just because I know کہ you people will be wondering کہ کیا ہوا implementation میں. We established a National Implementation Watch Committee where we had very high powered government people, private sector کے لوگ, media کے, and labor unions. It was a very good group. And for 2 years what we did was, because I was so tired of cases that I wanted to just focus on the larger implementation of the policy. So we went through regulatory bodies. اور یہ اگین اوپن اسپیشلی جو آپ کا کام اگر پاکستان میں ہے تو یو وڈ بی انٹرسٹڈ ان دیٹ. وی وینٹ تھرو دا ریگولیٹری باڈیز اینڈ وی انسٹیٹیوٹیڈ دس اینٹی سیکشل ہراسمنٹ تھنگ. فار ایگزامپل جو ایجوکیشن کا سارا معاملہ ہے اس میں ہم نے منسٹری آف ایجوکیشن, وی آسک دا منسٹری آف ایجوکیشن ٹو implement it, and we wanted them to notify all the institutions that this is a law, they need to institute this system. اور اس میں ہم نے we had said کہ the code will be actually put in a public place, جو common room یا کوئی ایسی جگہ پہ, and then there are some other things that they needed to do. And then HEC we worked with very closely for about a year, and we had the HEC develop a policy which was comparable to what was prescribed in the law, which included the students, and then they sent it out to all the universities. The universities are not very good at that, but some of them have really done very well. And now that list goes on. We went through a lot of regulatory bodies, and for cases for women, we started 6 legal aid centers only for sexual harassment laws to help them out. But I want to just give you an example of State Bank of Pakistan, okay? Because we wanted to get the banks also. A lot of women work there. So we went to the State Bank of Pakistan. Now again, we start from scratch because we don't have contacts, okay? So we went to State Bank of Pakistan, Karachi. And we talked to their legislative vice president, whoever that was, policy something vice president. So when we went, we introduced the legislation and stuff. And he says, Bibi, hamara isse koi taluk nahi hai. We only work on financial policy. We don't work on any other policy.
And he said, robots working for them?
Huh?
They have robots working for them apparently, right?
He said, if we communicate to the banks, it is only about compliance of financial policy. We don't have any hold on them, who they are and what their HR policies. And I said, you have everything to do with this policy. And we spent about 45 minutes in his office, and when we got up, he came out with us to see us off, and he says, don't you worry, we will put it in the audit, we will do this. And I said, I will send you questions that you will put in the audit. He says, fine, done. So State Bank of Pakistan has now included 4 or 5 questions that we have told them in the audit. And the banks were after us. Hame batao, hame samjhao. And listen, this is a better way, rather than me running after the banks. So now they are running after us for compliance. So a lot of organizations have done very well. A lot of organizations are trying to dodge. The media is the slowest one, I think, other than 3-4 channels. I mean, they're so quick on accountability of everybody else, but they are really behind on this. And they were the ones that used to ask me, "Gee, implementation kaise hogi?" And now I tell them, I said, "You guys are the slowest in implementation." Some of the universities have done wonders. Quaid-e-Azam University, well, firing of people was happening even before it became law. I mean, this was one law that got implemented several years before actually it turned into law. Geo was one channel, I can say again very proudly, that instituted the law in the letter and spirit. And so they have now had this policy for about 7 years almost, because in the middle of the movement they had, and they have fired many senior managements. They just fire them. They don't have anything else. They just fire them. So after the law was instituted, for example, Quaid-e-Azam University fired 2 people. One was a very senior, about to be retired controller examiner with a big beard. And he was caught, and the case, it was a very difficult case, and one was a lecturer. So both the cases went to their, the universities have it, so their what is their highest body? नहीं, जो बोर्ड सा होता है उनका, they call it something else. नहीं, स्टैंडिंग कमेटी नहीं होती जो उनके करिकुलम अप्रूव करती है and all that. Okay, the board ही आप कह लो. They had, like HEC had put them as their final authority to say yes, this guy should be fired or not. So it went there, and there was a big fight and all that, because they were not used to the role. We do a lot of training of inquiry committee members. We do a lot of training of management. And so it's very nice that we don't actually side with any one of the parties. We are totally for the process. So the people who approach us are basically the inquiry committees. जल्दी आओ हमें बताओ ये केस आया कैसे करना, so then we train them, we train them in communication, how to ask questions, how to be just, in a sense, fair. So then there was one case in Punjab University after the law was passed, and that guy had 18 complaints against her, and there was one PhD student who actually he pulled her in. He had a bedroom next to his office in Punjab University.
That was in media.
Pardon me? Yeah, that came up. In media got it a bit late, but I think they showed the whole thing. And that was such a difficult case, because that guy had contacts everywhere, to the highest political level, and we got safarish from there, and we really took a stand, and I'm so glad that the Vice Chancellor of Punjab University and the committee members took a stand. And they took a stand, and we told them, we are totally behind you. And it is not possible that people who passed these laws would then go around and they'd say कि भाई मेरा दोस्त है तो उसको छोड़ दो. But we really fought that case and won. And there was a lot. Yeah.
Can you give examples of the range of types of cases that you've received?
Okay, now we have 2 types of cases. One, because there are 2 laws. Because one has the regular police and court type process. Usme we have about 100. But interestingly enough, those cases which we thought would cover the informal sector and the public places and home, most of the cases are coming of incest. Father-in-law, jade, those kinds of cases are coming that are going to the police now.
And it's not harassment, it's actually sexual activity.
They are coming under sexual harassment. Somehow a lot of debate, just because sexual harassment now has become such an acceptable, legitimate term. We have banners, and people do not know why. It makes me so happy, because I know we went through hell to get this term established. But President has mentioned it in 4 speeches, and the Prime Minister, when they count all the good things they did, and when they say anti-sexual harassment laws, ऐसे 5 किलो मेरा खून इसलिए बढ़ जाता है. Just hearing the term sexual, Prime Minister saying sexual harassment means a lot to me. So sexual harassment has become a very, very legitimate term. So what is happening in the country is that a lot of things that were kind of hush-hush, were not talked about. They are coming out as sexual harassment. Television walas are doing their shows and they say sexual harassment at home, and then a lot that comes out is incest. So, which is fine, you know, as the dheere dheere will expand. Now, another thing that I wanted to share with you is that after our laws, first of all, these laws were significant in many, many ways. One is that this continuous 15 years of militancy in Pakistan, you know, pushing a woman, everything has become immoral for us. So pushing a woman behind the four walls, that continuous process has taken away a lot of oxygen. So this was the first assertion back. This was the first pushback. दूसरा इससे जो फायदा हुआ वो ये हुआ कि we have suddenly legitimized workplace. You know, we were saying make the workplace better for us, but what has happened is that the workplace and public space has been stamped legitimate for women. So we have changed the question. We're not saying, will you allow your daughter to work or not? We're saying, working is alright, but provide this kind of an environment. So, you know, suddenly the debate has changed. That happened, and then because of this relationship that we forged with the government, suddenly they were open to more legislation. So there was a huge domino effect, and we took more and they passed more. So I quickly wanted to go through. This was our first one, which is we amended section 509. Isme 5 lakh rupees, $5,000 bane jurmana and 3 years imprisonment. This was the second one that I talked about. Isme there is another provision. I didn't go into the detail, but you can go to the committee that every organization has to institute. Or if you do not trust that committee, or the abuser is too kind of up there and you feel like the committee will not do justice, you can go out to an ombudsman office. So we also got that established because people thought we could never get an institution established. But we got the federal ombudsman established. Now we are chasing the provincial governments like anything. We've gotten the Sindh government to institute one, the Punjab one we got about 2 weeks ago. So we are after them like wo jo witches of UN tha na, now we are witches of Pakistan. We are just after them. So we got this amendment passed in 2000 and actually it was 11, December of 11 when it finally got passed. Throwing acid to be a crime. I think you must have seen that movie, Sharmeen Ubaid Wali. Usme we actually took a comprehensive legislation. The comprehensive legislation was not taken up, and they said abhi sirf amendments hongi. So we then helped them with the amendments. The amendments are passed. The comprehensive bill has been sitting there for about 1.5 years now, and it has not gone through yet. This was another amendment that there's a parliamentarian, her name is Donia Aziz from PMLQ. She started working on it about 3 years ago. And this bans 4 cultural practices. One is giving women in exchange for conflict resolution, badle sulah isko bolte hain, forced marriage or Holy Quran se marriage, or actually stopping a woman from inheriting. And then there was another law. This is more for legal aid. A lot of women get stuck in jails because they don't have bail money, and their family stigmatized them, and they said, you know, na ab ye buri auratein ho gayi hain, and they don't give bail money for them. So this law was to provide them bail money. Then this was one that I worked a lot on. I was also part of the National Commission on the Status of Women. This is a watchdog body to look after women's affairs. Women's affairs nahi, lekin hum dekhte hain ki where the gaps are, etc. So we had been trying very hard. Actually, other people were trying earlier for 7 years to amend that law and give this institution some teeth, क्योंकि बहुत ही benign सा institution था. So I worked on it for about 3 years with my other colleagues, and we got this through too. So in total we got 7 laws passed in 2 years. So that was after a gap of 50 years. So for here my lessons were, now that I'm here, एक तो ये कि people know of our issues. एक violent case होता है and then उसका चर्चा बहुत होता है, and then people, you know, we turn into museum items for the Western world, really. But what I feel very strongly is that they should know our struggles also. They should know that we fight for these things and we are continuously struggling, and we do make changes. And we do push our parliament to act. And then the second one, basically the same, okay, we need to break the stereotype. We need to, I think that Pakistani women are pretty strong. And regardless of what we suffer, we continuously make an effort. So that aspect needs to be more. And also I think there needs to be a link drawn, because all these societies are very patriarchal. And I get to hear this, I'm sure you get to hear this too, but people say, oh yeah, oh you must be very brave, and we were there 100 years ago. And I say, excuse me, I see the patriarchal patterns here very clearly. So fine, you guys have it more glossed over and more subtle, and we have it in our face. That is the difference. We have it very glaring, and here it's more polite. But sexual harassment, I mean, I meet women who say there is not a single day where we experience some kind of sexual harassment. And then there are women who tell me that they have never experienced sexual harassment in their lives. So I do not know what is the truth. But in any case, I think that the patriarchal strands are very common in this whole world, and we all are struggling. And just the other day I was speaking at Stanford and on political participation of women. And among 160 countries, I think United States is number 77, Pakistan is 57. And so on. It's not that I'm comparing, but what I'm saying is that we are at different stages, and we can only move forward if we have some kind of a solidarity. If we look down upon each other, वहाँ वाले यहाँ का stereotype बनाए, उनको लगता है यहाँ दरख्तों पे औरतें उगती हैं, and the minute they will land here, they will have 10 women around them, and nobody has parents, or पता नहीं क्या. Really, and it is within the educated classes also. I'm not ashamed to say that. It is a very sad thing. And here the stereotype is that we all have 7 mothers, and polygamy is the standard. So it's even people who have visited have these strange stereotypes. So I think that we really need to break those stereotypes, and we need to develop some kind of a bond where we say, listen, we have problems, you have problems, let's kind of face them. And we have conservatives who have beards, you have conservatives who do not have beards. But we have very similar problems, and so I think that is my general conclusion after coming here, especially. And I do not know about Pakistanis here, but in Washington DC, I met a lot of Pakistanis who spoke so negatively about everything under the sky when it came to Pakistan. And I told them, I have come from that country, and I'm so happy. And you live in a country with a lot of facilities, and I can't breathe when you talk about Pakistan. It's just so negative. So I hope that people in Palo Alto are not like that, and they do. And if you want a positive, vitamin ki goli, I can always come. And there is so much happening there. There is so much happening that I can tell you, just related to Parliament, and in question and answer, whatever, right now, the discussion, I can tell you more. But this is something that I thought, you could help me out with, because this is just a sample. In about a couple of days, my book would be out. And I would appreciate if you give me feedback, because this got re-edited for the audience, for the readership here. And so it'll be nice for me to know if you think that it is something that people here can relate to, and also help me spread the word. Because I think that people need to know. The book is about the case more, but in the epilogue I talk about the laws. So I do say that, the day that we filed this case, then the Prime Minister has now declared it as the official Working Women's Day for Pakistan, 22nd of December. So this year also, the government also does programs on 22nd of December, and the private sector and other people. So this is what it is, and I think that people need to hear some positive stories about Pakistan, and please come up with your positive stories, and I will tell you more. And that's about it.
What is Mehergarh?
Mehergarh is my organization in Pakistan. We were the kind of epicenter of Asha. We were the secretariat of Asha. Asha ka steering samajh lo, jo puri movement thi. We have closed down Asha last year, because we felt that movements should have clear objectives, they should achieve the objectives, then they should be shut down. A lot of working women across the country, they said, we cannot even imagine that Asha would shut down. And I said, you would see that, because you all have to take it forward. And now there are institutions that will take it forward. So Mehergarh continues with that objective of implementation of these this legislation, and also helping the parliament for more legislation. वैसे it's an institution that we created in 2005 for मेरे ख्याल है we get to an age where we feel like we are getting old now, we need to train our younger people to be activists and be good. So this was actually started by a lot of us who felt like our younger generation was not doing enough, and we focus on youth, and we do very rigorous training courses. I say I have developed these training modules. एक तरफ से इंसान डालो, दूसरी तरफ से activist निकलता है. So
wait, you chose Mehergarh as in Balochistan?
Yes.
Wait,
right?
Yeah.
Some of us may not know.
Yeah.
तो वही उससे क्या ताल्लुक है? वही सवाल मेरे सामने वही था कि उस मेहरगढ़ से जिसको हम जानते हैं उससे क्या ताल्लुक है?
The reason why we kept the name Mehergarh is like 8,000 to 10,000 years old civilization.
बलूचिस्तान
जो उस वक्त तो पाकिस्तान में नहीं था, लेकिन अब जो बलूचिस्तान है वहाँ पर उसके रेमिनेंट्स है. That civilization is very old, and mostly French archaeologists have worked on it and published books about it. मगर हमारे बच्चों के स्कूल में भी नहीं पढ़ाया जाता मेहरगढ़, and nobody knows about it. So we kept this name specifically so that people would ask us what is Mehergarh, and also because we wanted to make a point that we are very old people meaning क्या कह लो, ancient people of that land, and we were not born in 1947, and we are very proud of our history, and we own all the layers of culture, and we own all the religions that our land has seen. We fully own them, and so that is a very political and philosophical statement, the name of our organization, because there is a school of thought that thinks कि हमारी हिस्ट्री शायद मोहम्मद बिन कासिम के लैंड करने से शुरू होती है या 1947 से शुरू होती है, and we totally disagree with that. So we say Mehergarh because we feel, and we also tell our younger जो भी हमारे participants होते हैं training के, that we need to be very proud of this land, and we need to be proud of our history, and we need to have our 2 feet on the ground and then come up with creative solutions. We don't have to import solutions. We can learn from everybody, but we need to have our feet on the ground, and we need to create the solutions for our land. तो वो कल्चरल बिट हमारी हर चीज में बहुत झलकती है. You know, we own our culture very much.
So does the book talk about your own experiences also? Because yes. I believe it's an autobiography.
Yeah, and like I said, I would call it an autobiographical case study because मेरी जिंदगी बहुत सारी ज़्यादा है, मगर I do talk about one part of it. So it's my own case that I fought. Laws पे a lot of people told me to do another book on the laws because it is like a Hollywood movie. I mean, with its ups and downs and villains and all that. And actually, there is a movie maker, Shoaib Mansoor. He was very interested in this making a movie of this book. But right now, they're working on a serial play. But I do talk about the laws a little bit at the end, just to kind of take the reader to where it all led to. But I think that there should be a movie on the legislation. I do not know if any one of you have seen Iron-Jawed Angels.
Which one? I'm sorry?
Iron-Jawed Angels. Okay, because that was a movie that was referred to many times to me because that was about legislation when women got voting rights in United States.
Oh, okay.
And that movie goes through the struggle and finally getting it. So many people have referred that to me and saying, "Nee, you have to do another book and we should do a film."
I've recently seen an Indian movie named Inkar that's also on sexual harassment and a woman fights a case and all that.
So maybe if you read the book, if you like the book, maybe we can make a little committee because it's about time that United States heard some positive stories from Pakistan also, maybe in the form of a film or a book or whatever. But I think the laws definitely have the potential of either another book or directly a film because it'll be nice to have something positive about Pakistan for a change. And I think women's side is very organized and we have many chalo mini achievements hai, magar we think it is many achievements that we can talk about.
Well, Saving Face was kind of in that direction.
हाँ, उसका angle was very positive. Yeah, because a lot of people in Pakistan were very upset because that kind of shows the acid throwing issue. But I thought it was the angle was nice. It was people doing something good about it.
Well, I don't know. Being a filmmaker, I could go on and on about it, but being a human being or citizen of this world, and Pakistani and Muslim, there's a phenomenon in filmmaking, or actually the image part of filmmaking, which is the vision is created by the repetitive, films. Yeah. So it has to be 24 images per second, which formulates a movement of an image on film. But similarly, I feel, this is my sociological approach, that the more you see in film, more of a character or person or image or let's say certain ethnicity, if you see that person, like Hollywood has done, let me come straight to the point, for the last century, they haven't even produced one single positive Arab or Muslim character, or even animation, right? So in the midst of that, when all you see negative about Pakistan or Middle Eastern world is negative, that kind of breaks my heart. So therefore, I'm all with you, and I make this proposal to make that film for you if I can somehow, or at least be part of it. So that's the problem with that. It didn't have that positive ending because it was an issue that was pushed under the rug, right? But when it was shown, the mirror was shown to the nation, they were horrified. I mean, I myself was embarrassed at first, but then at the end, I mean, what do you expect, right? And similarly, I mean, the major theaters did not show it. I was able to see the Iranian film that was, because of that controversy as well as lack of interest. So in other words, you're making a film, you're kind of degrading the country. In the end, the larger masses do not even pay attention to it. So, anyways, I'll just shut up there. Yeah. So that's the problem with that film. It was a good film in a way. It was good intention, but
there is so little that comes out of the country. I am also for that something positive should come out. I can say 5 very important things that happened in the last 5 years that I'm very proud of. But here people do not know about it because nobody talks about it, nobody writes about it. It's only a rape case or a Malala case also got a lot of attention, but at the end of it was a shooting of a young girl, which startled everybody. So yes, everybody was supportive, but then the bottom line was the same, that we are savages. Yeah. So I think that image really needs to. I don't want to gloss it over, and I'm not saying that you deny it, but my God, there is so much more. And I really do not like our role as a museum piece. That's what now I'm doing a lot of public speaking in Washington, D.C. also, and I keep telling them, you think that we have all these people with big beards in Pakistan, and I say 50% of us are women, and we don't grow beards. Even if we want to grow beards, we don't have beards. But, one is very tired of that image. And I also say that, you need to realize that we are also fighting against the same people. Because you lost 3,500 people in the Twin Towers, and we have lost 30,000 people by the same guys who have no religion and who have no nationality. And so we are also victims, and we are fighting against them. Yes, our government walks on eggshells or whatever the problems are, but it is a global issue, and let's kind of, look at it not as Pakistanis troublemakers, but it is a global issue that we created. So let's connect up.
Yeah, definitely. And just to add on to it, not to bash the country, there are a lot of positive things about this country that are here, but the very entity was created by the material that was printed in the next state over in Arizona by the CIA, which was an extension of Pakistan, is an extension of that.
Yes, absolutely.
So there's enough blame to go around, but let's call spade a spade and blame the bigger culprit first.
I would say that too.
Mm-hmm.
अच्छा, वो टॉपिक की तरफ वापस आते हैं. थोड़ा सा बताइए, इस जो बनाया आपने ये एक्ट वगैरह, इसमें क्या डेफिनेशन क्या है सेक्सुअल हैरेसमेंट?
जो एक्ट है दोनों में मैं बता देती हूँ. एक तो ये है कि एनी अनवेलकम्ड जेस्चर, वर्बल नॉन वर्बल कम्युनिकेशन, टच or request for sexual pleasure, for sexual relations, request for sexual relations, that becomes sexual harassment. और फिर उसके बहुत सारी हमने then we categorized it. One is that where you are harassed by somebody of the same position as you, somebody from like harassment from superior, and then related to media and computer, digital information, etc. So then we have categories under that. And unwelcomed becomes the most important thing, because that is what the test is. Because if my husband holds my hand or another guy holds my hand, holding the hand is not to be described. That the focus is not on holding the hands. The focus is how I felt when somebody did it, and did they cross the line or not. Just the American law mein, it is what they call a test of reasonability, where they ask whether a common person would consider this sexual harassment or not. We didn't keep that, because we do not know what will come up if we ask a common person. So our law is based on a very... Now the analysis in the world says that there are two schools of thought. One is more in terms of rights, like civil rights, jo yahan ka model hai. One is more in terms of behavior. So we kind of fall, by default, we fall in the behavioral category. So we have described the behavior, but we say unwanted behavior of this nature. But it has to have...
Unwelcome.
Unwelcome.
Unwanted.
Unwelcomed. Unwelcomed. And it has to have sexual tones to it. So if it is a swear word, it has to have a sexual tone to it. Or even a stare. Sexual attention is also a word that we have used. In the criminal amendment, we have defined it, and we said this kind of behavior if found at public place, in buses, at markets, at home. So home ke upar bahut logon ke pet mein marod hua, lekin finally it got through, because home is something they get very tense about.
So I have a specific question about that. So I have a cousin in Lahore, I think I mentioned this to you the other day. She works in multinational. Multinational has employee directory. Employee directory has photos of employees, for badges in the database, and the picture which she gave was taken on the office premises, company premises. So it's a very unique picture. Now that picture got leaked out. So there's no way it could have come from anywhere else than...
Yeah.
So she brought that to the HR attention, and they said that that's not really... Does that count as... Should they have...
It depends on leaked out where, like, was it abused, used somewhere, or just leaked out?
Well, privacy concern.
If it's just leaked out, then it could have gone on to...
I think that would not probably fall under sexual harassment, but it would fall under some kind of violation of privacy. And usually the HR policy has pretty extensive lists of what people cannot do, except for sexual harassment. So now sexual harassment has been added. But I think that this would be more like breach of privacy or something. But if that picture was used somewhere in a sexual manner or in a bad way, with dirty joke or something, then I think she would have a case.
Okay.
Can you tell us a bit more? I know when we met earlier, you spoke a bit about the challenges around domestic violence.
Yeah.
You can talk a bit about that.
The law or just the
I guess the law and also the challenges.
Oh gosh, that's a long, big saga. Yeah, we have been at it for almost 9 years now. That started with Sherry Rahman proposing it, where Sherry was in opposition, and then the standing government was of Musharraf at that time, and then Mahanaz Rafi she was from Punjab and MNA. Then she proposed a somewhat similar bill, and then the government amalgamated. That took about 4 years, and then it has been going back and forth. When this government came in 2008, Yasmin Rahman actually proposed a somewhat similar bill. And sari kahani badi lambi hai, lekin so it got passed. Finally, it got passed by the first house, National Assembly, in 2009.
It being what?
Huh?
It being what?
The bill of domestic violence.
Okay.
It got passed through the National Assembly in 2009, fall, October, I think. And then the Senate is very difficult. Senate has a lot of they have older people, and they're not very closely attached to their parties. They have a mind of their own. And at that time, it was quite conservative. So one of these big bearded guy got up. He's called Shirani. Hara sach hoga behan ke. And he said, oh, no, this is not on. So everybody just went quiet. So they threw it out of the window. Then it went into ek hoti hai committee, which if there is a conflict of both the houses, then it gets resolved there. It went there, then the constitution changed, the committee got dissolved, and then according to the new constitution, it had to be anything in conflict had to go into the joint session. So on the joint session, this was the lowest priority, so we kept getting joint sessions and it would not come on the agenda. Then we lobbied and lobbied and lobbied and finally got on the agenda, and we watered it down, we changed it, and the parliamentarians that were really working on it were Atiya Naitullah and Yasmin Rahman, and we got every party on board. And so we made changes according to every party's taste so that it goes through. And when everybody agreed, it went back onto the joint session. Sorry, it might be boring, but it was a very long saga. It went back onto the joint session, and Maulvi Fazlur Rahman got up. And he said, done, this is bad, and this is for bad women, and blah, blah, blah. So
he actually said that?
Yes. He said these immoral women of NGOs, we don't want our government to become NGO. I used to. So that day, even though we had the consensus, that was the day to either get it through or go back, to wo saap nahi kha jata, and you go back to square one. And that day we couldn't push it through. We had the votes, we had the parties, but the government was on such a sensitive ground. At that time, they were passing this American security, there was the Parliamentary Committee on Security, National Security. They were passing the outline for US-Pak relations. And, they needed every party. And so they were on a very, very weak footing. So hum kurbani ka bakra. Auraton ke gale pe churi chal gayi, and the bill went out. And I wrote an article, if you're interested, if you Google my name and Tribune, the article I think is titled, I've never seen the right-wingers laugh so hard. And that article became very famous actually, because I was so mad. And I wrote that article almost crying. I remember I was sitting in the car with my laptop, and at 12 o'clock at night, I sent it to Tribune and I said, put this up, and they really put it up. But anyway, we lost the case. So now we're still working at it, but it's a very long process.
What is the essence of the bill that you're proposing or trying to stop that?
It's not, it is basic. Number one, it criminalizes it. It says ke biwi ko marna jurm hai, and then you have a punishment for it. And then the most of the bulk of the bill is to get a restraining order. If you are afraid of your safety, then by anybody, then you are able to get a restraining order. So it's not rocket science at all. It's pretty simple, but we couldn't push it.
I have another question. You mentioned that you have training in which you sort of develop young activists.
Yes.
Does any part of that training look at how young activists can sort of continue this process of working across the boundaries of civil society, corporate institutions, and government?
We try and do that, but it is very difficult to change the mindset of the civil society also. I think ASHA was a very unique thing, and I hope that some people write about it, because what we developed was like magic, eventually. Between the social classes, between all sectors, media, parliament, it was like, free-floating as a unity. So people who got associated with ASHA kind of got groomed. But we still have these hardcore civil society walas, who feel like they are not genuine enough unless they take off their shoe and beat somebody. So we still have those hardliners, and I think it is necessary to have that too. But you need to strategize. I feel like we need to be smart. We need to play smart if we want changes. You cannot just be your typical, bashing, ye Amir Samraj. Those days are gone. We need to be smart, and women especially. For human rights, other human rights, we need to be smart. For United States also, I say that for US-Pak relationship, we need to be smart, because we really sometimes shoot ourselves in the foot. So we need to be smart, and that's what I came here on a fellowship. Basically, I hover around Congress all day in DC, because I'm learning the culture of Congress, and I want to learn, because I feel like US-Pak relationships are so important that we cannot just leave it to our bureaucrats and we cannot leave it to our government. Civil society has to be involved in the US-Pak relations, and we need to make sense out of it. Enough of this demonizing on both sides, and we have had enough. So that's why I want to learn that. I want to learn who makes the decision. I want to learn how they operate. I want to learn where they get their information from, so we can start feeding it. But I think that we Pakistanis, young Pakistanis like you, and the ones that we train, we all need to be smart.
I think in a similar vein, I have had friends, we've talked about Pakistan starting a marketing campaign for the country to just market ourselves in a different kind of way. But that's a different conversation.
That's an excellent thing. Excellent thing, yeah.
My question to you is, who joins your movements? I know your movement speaks to women across all sectors, social sectors as well. But do you find that the women from a lower social class are actually able to voice themselves, or do you find that women of upper class end up being the voice for the women of lower class?
I would say in terms of talking to the parliament is one aspect of voicing. But in terms of getting their issues out to the private sector, to other policymakers, I think they were quite active. Because we used to have these huge gatherings. Asha would have like one very popular one was Working Women's Assembly. So we used to get women from all sectors and from all regions of Pakistan. And there we used to run parallel sessions. So all nurses are together, and then whoever wants to attend the session. So nurses would get up and talk about their harassment, and there was a lot of sharing. It was a very, this is not a fair way of saying it, but a very womanly process, okay? Of pata nahi feminine process mujhe kehna chahiye. But it was not intellectualization of things. It was a very hard-run process. Pata nahi kya main ye words use kar rahi hu, but it was very emotional to be a part of Asha, for men also. So we got Bhattawali women to just get up, and they were, the empowerment that they experienced was that all these city women and some police walas and lawyers, they're listening to them. And they would get up and say that when the door knocks, when the guy comes to get the rent, and we know that we don't have the rent, we know what would happen next. And that fear was really communicated, and it was empowering on both sides. They felt like, that was what the voice you're talking about. It didn't matter if it went to the parliament or not. But they felt that they kind of voiced their pain and contributed to the movement, So us lihaz se for them it was their voice. But how then we articulated in terms of a half-page note to the parliament is a different story. But we kept them on board so much that they were like, hamara bill. Actually, I had a very hard time. Once the bill was accepted by the government, then I wrote to everybody and I said, ab koi isko Asha bill nahi kahega. And that was very difficult for them. For 10 years, Asha code, Asha bill, Asha ye. So then I said, now we have to give the whole of the credit to the government or the parliament. So now it is not ours, it will be theirs, and we will be the one, phoolon ka haar unke gale mein dalenge, aapne kiya. So then they understood the strategy.
तो ये बताइए हुदूद ऑर्डिनेंस के बारे में और उससे क्या मतलब इसका
हुदूद ऑर्डिनेंस का जो मुशर्रफ साहब के दौर में हुआ था, द वुमेन प्रोटेक्शन एक्ट, व्हिच अ लॉट ऑफ पीपल फील लाइक इट गेव अ लॉट ऑफ प्रोटेक्शन टू वुमेन, बट इट एक्चुअली जस्ट सेड दैट अब औरतों को मुक्का नहीं लगेगा, थप्पड़ लगेगा, सो अ लिटिल लाइटर थप्पड़, बट बेसिकली इट टुक दिस थिंग आउट ऑफ द हुदूद लॉज. फर्स्ट ऑफ ऑल, they changed it so that it was not a third party reporting, and secondly you all are familiar with zina ordinance, right? And secondly they changed the circumstantial evidence. See, adultery was never a crime in Pakistan until 1979 when so we were very angry. For 20 years our movement was to throw the Hudood ordinances out of the window. We didn't want an amendment, but anyway, that is what came about. But the amendment, at least, we did a research study last year from the Commission on Women, and earlier I did a study on jails, and 90% of the women who were in jails were under Hudood. And last year we did a study, and not a single woman is under Hudood. So that has been the positive thing. I mean, the law is still there, hanging like a sword. But at least the abusive part is out. Abusive part is out. So at least women are not in the jails.
But that's not thanks to the Women Protection Act.
It was because of that amendment. Yeah. So it didn't throw the whole thing out. So on the paper, adultery is still a crime, which we are very unhappy about. And Mullah says कि ये औरतों को इसलिए चुबन होती because ये adultery करती हैं. You know, that's how Mullah see it. But the fact is कि we feel कि morality should not be legislated. ठीक है ना, आपने अपने माँ बाप की खिदमत की या नहीं की, आपको 6 महीना जेल नहीं होनी चाहिए. ठीक है, इवन आपने नमाज पढ़ी या नहीं पढ़ी, आपको 6 महीने जेल नहीं होने. So we say that there are certain things that are crimes, you legislate those crimes. There are certain things that are your moral responsibility, your religious responsibility. Adultery is like that to us. It is not like, because it is consensual. The only reason, not because we want to do it.
So nowadays you're based in DC.
I'm telling myself, Abhi, I was telling Faraz that I kept saying, I'm here for a few months and probably I'll stay on. So just a couple of days ago I stopped saying probably because I know I will be staying on for maybe 2 years or 3 years. Which is kind of difficult, but I know that I'll be there.
Similar capacity of lobbying.
Yeah, I think that I will make myself more able to do some lobbying around US-Pak relations. I think I will continue to work on a daily basis in Pakistan, which I do, and I still terrorize the chief secretaries of the provinces and say, "Aapne ye kaam abhi tak nahi kiya." And I think that I will do a lot of public speaking here because I think that people need to see a different face of Pakistan, and I think we women have an advantage. Over men, because I think when we Pakistani women speaking about Pakistan is a different visual message than a Pakistani guy speaking about Pakistan.